Well, folks, if you didn't know already, now you know. Nina Turner is going, if she gets elected, if she manages to win this congressional race in Ohio, she will be just a regular Democrat. And before everybody comes and try to box my ears in the comments section to jump to Nina Turner's defense and say, oh, she's not like every other Democrat, she doesn't take corporate money. Okay, granted, she doesn't take corporate money. But what I mean by she's just going to go there and be a regular Democrat is she's going to go there and she's not going to put up much of an opposition to Democratic leadership. Whatever they say goes, and definitely at the most consequential times when it matters the most for her and the rest of the elected progressives to buck Democratic leadership and buck the status quo, she won't do it. That's what I mean by she's going to be a regular Democrat. She's already made clear that she ascribes to this toxic mindset. I'm on Team Democrat. I might say I agree with this policy, and the Democrats agree with this policy, but I'm not going to make a scene. I'm not going to call out my fellow Democrats. We're all on the same team. We're all in the same big club, and I don't want to rock the boat too much. She's already made clear that's where she stands in regards to calling out specific Democrats who are standing in the way of advancing left policies. And you already know from the beginning, from she announced that she was running as a Democrat, I had a feeling that this is the way it was going to go. I posted a whole video about the left criticisms of Nina Turner running as a Democrat. Those criticisms with like the one I mentioned earlier about as soon as these firebrands get elected or come anywhere near power in the Democratic Party, or once they're there too long, then they get this groupthink mindset and they get this go along to get along. I'm not going to rock the boat mindset. This is clearly a problem among elected progressives. And as the left movement, we haven't figured out how to combat this, how to address this, how to pressure them in the other direction. So I don't think it's a good idea for us to keep sending our best and brightest into this Democratic machine where we all know what the end game is, where we all know how it turns out. The same happened with Bernie Sanders, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Cori Bush, AOC. They start off as these firebrands, but as soon as they get in the Democratic Party, they conform and they become part of the status quo and the establishment. We don't know how to combat that, like I said, so I don't think it's a good idea to keep sending our best and brightest into the Democratic Party to be part of the machine. And then the other main criticism I had in that video was just, this is like, we just need, as the left movement needs to move past electoral politics, because the situation right now is so dire and it's so untenable that objectively, this timetable of, I don't know, we want to elect enough lefties who don't take corporate money, and then they're going to have a majority in the House, and they're going to have a majority in the Senate, and then they're going to have the White House. That timetable for whenever you think that's going to happen, it's not anywhere close enough to address the actual emergency we're living in right now, the out-of-control pandemic and the unprecedented economic crisis. 60 million people have lost their jobs since COVID started last year. About 60% of small businesses that had to close because of COVID are closed permanently. 40 million people are going to be evicted, millions of months in back rent. Tens of thousands of people waiting outside of food bank lines across the country because they can't feed their families. People can't afford to keep the lights on. The situation is untenable. We are and this is leading to scores of people dying. So every single day in this country is a mass casualty event. And if the left is serious about how existential these crises are, if we're serious about how urgent and emergent these crises are and the need to fix these problems immediately, then we have to come to terms with that this timetable of, oh, we just need to elect a couple more lefties, or like I said, we have to wait till some undefined time, unspecified time when they have an undisclosed amount of seats in Congress, then we'll get all the left policies that we've been hoping for. Like, that's become a fool's errand and just really divorced from the reality on the ground and how many people are barely getting by right now. So this whole fascination and obsession with electoral politics, it's unproductive at this moment for the left movement and the movement for the working class. And we should be more focused on organizing direct action, funding mutual aid, and doing general strikes and figuring out how to put public pressure on the politicians who are elected in Congress right now to do their fucking job. That's what we need to be doing instead of giving hundreds of thousands of dollars to politicians and volunteering and putting endless amount of hours into getting them elected so that they could go into Congress and change absolutely nothing. But I made that video with my criticisms of Nina Turner, and I said I wasn't gonna harp on it. I said I wasn't gonna keep coming out and, being overly critical of her during the campaign. I said I was just gonna, sit back and let it happen. But what I'm seeing is not only are many prominent leftists in this country not addressing those big criticisms of Nina Turner running as a Democrat, they are just completely ignoring that, and they're still trying to sell this to their audience as if this is the answer. Oh, we have to elect Nina Turner so she could change it. And it's like they're doing this big propaganda campaign just to elect what's going to be a regular politician who falls in line with the Democratic Party and doesn't buck the establishment. So it's kind of getting under my skin how they're acting like many of these prominent lefties and people in new media, they're acting as if we didn't see every single one of these elected progressives fold every single time it mattered during this unprecedented crisis, and acting as if we should just still support them anyway, even though they're clearly not doing anything to advance left policies. So this whole RAA Team Nina, no matter what, it's really turning into a cult of personality. And I wouldn't be so aggravated by this if people knew what they were getting into, and they knew that they were giving hundreds of thousands of dollars. They were putting all their volunteer time and organizing into just getting somebody elected who isn't going to change anything, who isn't going to get them those policies that they need. If people understood that and they did it anyway just because they like Nina Turner, that'd be one thing. But I feel like it's very misleading, and again, it's misdirecting the well-intentioned energy of the left to try to do something to get immediate change. It's redirecting that into just this helping somebody fulfill career ambitions. And we're seeing the same thing, it's the same cycle with Obama and Bernie and AOC, people who really want left change in this country, thinking that the way to go about it is to elect some more politicians who aren't going to change anything. So the perpetuating of this mythology that we just need to elect some savior to come in and save the day is again, I think it's unproductive at this moment for the left movement. So the big question people on the left need to be asking, especially the people who are out there pushing for Nina Turner and doing propaganda for Nina Turner, what you need to ask yourself is, okay, say she gets elected. Best case scenario, she wins this election. She goes to Congress. What exactly is she going to do that's different than the rest of the Justice Democrats? How is she going to get them to change their behavior from refusing to call out party leadership and refusing to buck Nancy Pelosi and the rest of the shitty corporate Democrats? How is she going to make them change that? No, to this point, haven't heard anybody really grill her on that. And that should be a prerequisite for any support. But Mike Figueredo he kind of touched on this and asked her about this in this broader question about the people on the left like myself who are calling the Justice Democrats, calling AOC, calling Bernie Sanders, calling them frauds and calling them sellouts. Her answer was horrible, and I'll get into it, but it was a whole lot of defending the squad. It's a whole lot of defending the Justice Democrats, and what really put it over the top for me and made me have to do this video criticizing Nina Turner about this answer in this interview is it is getting under my skin when I see people like Nina Turner spending more time browbeating lefties in this country, browbeating the working class who are angry and fed up at politicians not doing anything. They spend more time browbeating us than they do holding the politicians' feet to the fire who are failing in this unprecedented emergency. I mean, just stop to think about how absurd that dynamic is. You're more mad at, and you're spending more time criticizing the 60 million people who have no income through no fault of their own, and the government has left them for dead. You're spending more time criticizing the people who have no health care in the middle of a pandemic because they're frustrated at our government and the failed state that we live in. And they're mad at the politicians who are sitting there getting rich off of everything that's going on, taking 20 weeks. Congress, the House was on vacation for 20 weeks since COVID started. And you're going to be more mad at people who are angry about that than you're mad at the politicians who are doing this shit. I can't wrap my mind around this logic. If you are so offended, if it hurts you to your soul that people are calling Bernie Sanders and AOC sellouts, I have a more productive use of your time. Instead of browbeating the angry masses who've been left for dead by our government in the middle of an emergency, instead of trying to, and I don't know what you think what the end result of telling them you shouldn't be as mad as you are, like trying to tell people, oh, you're being over dramatic. I don't know what you think, the angle. You think people are going to be like, I guess I shouldn't be so mad that I'm going to go bankrupt, I'm going to be evicted, and I have no health care, and I have no job. I guess I shouldn't be as mad as I am at the politicians who are letting this happen. Like, do you think people are going to take that approach? So if you want people to stop calling themselves, here's a tip for you. How about you spend all your time and all your energy trying to get them, these same politicians, to change their objectionable behavior? Because it's not like we're doing this out of the blue. It's not like we're doing this for no reason. It's not for personal reasons. We're doing it for moments like force a vote. When they had the numbers, they had the leverage to force Nancy Pelosi out as Speaker, who has presided over the worst government response to emergency in U.S. history as the Speaker of the House. So she should have been out, and they had the numbers to do that. They also had the numbers to force a floor vote on Medicare for All, force a floor vote on UBI, and any number of critical left policies right now, and they chose not to do that. So instead of being mad at people who are angry and livid that they chose to side with Nancy Pelosi and they chose to side with the establishment and not rock the boat, how about this? You tell them to next time actually buck the establishment, actually buck party leadership like they were sent to do. Because I promise you, if they do that, if they're consistent about bucking Democratic leadership and standing up to the corporatists and the neoliberals in the Democratic Party, if they were consistent about that, if we see them doing that every single day, then I guess you will dramatically cut down the amount of people on the left calling them sellouts. So instead of wasting your time trying to browbeat people and telling them not to be as angry as they are, spend your time criticizing the people in power who have failed to do the most basic function of their job and make them be better so that we don't have to level these harsh criticisms against them. So I have the clip from Nina Turner, and I'm going to show it to you, and I'm going to break it down. I wanted to make this clip smaller because It's longer than most clips I would normally show you, and I was thinking about cutting it up, but there isn't really a break to have in this. So if you guys bear with me, I'm gonna show you the full clip. It's about 4 minutes. It's definitely worth watching the whole 4 minutes so you really understand where I'm coming from when I give my criticism of Nina Turner. But I have the clip. I'm gonna show it to you and break it down. But first, you already know the deal. If you're able to contribute to the show financially, I have the link to PayPal and Patreon in the About page of the YouTube channel. You can sign up for Patreon if you want to do monthly subscriptions. I have different levels: $2 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month. If you feel more comfortable doing a one-time contribution, like I said, the link to PayPal is also in the About page of the YouTube channel. The channel is also on Odyssey, and I am incredibly grateful for all the people who have contributed to the show over the last few months. And the people in the audience who may not be able to contribute financially, but you guys share the videos, you guys comment. Yes, I do read all the comments. I'm incredibly grateful for all of you guys because you all help this show be as successful as it is. And as if you haven't noticed by now, we have officially passed the 4,000 subscriber mark. So again, incredibly grateful for my audience. Now I'm going to play the clip and then come back and break it down.
Mike, you're right. It is complicated. That's the first thing I need the grassroots to understand, especially progressives. And I know progressives are disappointed. I mean, we tried 2016, 2020. I get it. So for me as a leader, not just somebody elected, because there are things that I can do in committee, things I can do on the floor of the Congress, but there's also things that I can do in my community and also across this country. So I don't want to say don't be disappointed. You got to have some understanding. It's okay to be disappointed, but the squad is ultimately the best that we have in terms of being able to push an agenda. And what that means is that you might not always agree with the methods. I need people to understand that when you are on the inside, it doesn't mean that you are selling out. I know they've gotten a lot of pressure, but they are the ones up there holding it down. They're pushing as hard as they can. And just because things are not going exactly the way, just because they're not using the exact tactics that some in the activist community want them to use, that doesn't mean that you throw them away. Because guess what? If you're throwing away members of the squad who are our best opportunity to get what we need, and also some members of that progressive caucus, then you're not going to have anybody there. So if the prerequisite, in summation, if the prerequisite for relationship means that I have to do, or the squad has to do everything you say, the way you say do it, then there's not much of a relationship at all. And that you're going to be disappointed. Hell, they're going to be disappointed with me. I said that to Tim Black when we interviewed. I'm saying it to you, Mike. I want them to know you're going to be disappointed at some point. But that does not mean that you give up totally on the people who are the best fighting chance that you have. And then there's something called strategy. So the grassroots strategy is different than the strategy once you are on the inside. You will know when somebody is sold out. And I assure you that the squad has not, underline, bold, underscore, sold out in any way. They need the grassroots. You can hold them accountable, but you don't throw them away. I mean, some of the pressures, even with Congresswoman Cori Bush, I just want to use her as the example. I mean, she just got there. Hell, overall, the squad members overall just got there, even the ones who've been there a little longer. And then you have people just throwing up their hands, throwing them away just because they're not using the tactics that you want them to use. You don't know what is going on. And so part of the thing that I want to do outside of what I do, and I'm claiming this on the floor of the House of Representatives and also as a member of committee, is to also continue to educate and bring people. I just want people to see it different ways, to get understanding. Stephen Covey, one of the most world-renowned leadership gurus, has a quote that I love. He says, "Seek first to understand and then to be understood." That doesn't mean we're always agree, but at least let's give each other enough bandwidth to understand. And for the love of God, do not throw away, malign the squad members. It doesn't mean you're not going to be disappointed, but to throw them away is at our own peril. It really is.
First point I want to make is, isn't it funny how all these people who are out defending the Justice Democrats, who are defending the squad. Now they sound like all the corporate Democrats and the political operatives who were criticizing the left for being too rowdy and being too oppositional to the corporate Democrats. They're literally making the same arguments now. Nina Turner, I don't think she made the divisive argument in this specific video, but they're all doing it. All the people who are mad, more mad at the left, calling out AOC and Bernie Sanders, so they're doing this, oh, you're dividing the left, you're the reason why we can't have good things, and you're so divisive, we need to be united, and we need a unity politics and all that shit. That's literally exactly what the corporate Democrats do. And also it sounds a lot like the argument that she's making right here is we have to support them because it's the best we got. What is it? What does that remind you of? The lesser of two evils bullshit that the Democratic Party has been trying to shove down our throats from the time from as long as I can remember. This, oh, at least we're not as shitty as those other guys. And that shit hasn't worked on me yet. It's not going to work on me now. This low bar of we are barely better than the shittiest people in this country who are failing at every level to do their most basic job. We're just slightly better than them. So you all have to suck it up and support us anyway because you can't do any better than us. That argument is not going to work on me ever, ever. I'm not supporting any politician because they're less shitty than somebody else. Because that's exactly how we got to where we are right now. The only way any politician gets my support is if I think they're actively fighting for the policies that I want, that I think are best for the country. That's the only way. And I'm not giving any support just because you're less shitty than the other guys. And before you tell me, oh, AOC and Justice Democrats, they're fighting for the policy. No, they're not. They once in a while, they might tweet about the policies I like, but they're not actually making any moves to get those policies. I put out a tweet the other day where, like, I dare anybody to name one time the Justice Democrats, AOC, use their power as Congress people to push for and advance Medicare for all. Like this, let me address this mindset that there are only hope. And if we don't do everything we can to appease these elected progressives, we will never get the policies we want. And again, there are only hope to get them. I don't agree with that. Not aside from the many numerous endless list of examples of them not actually fighting for the policies that they say they support. But just this whole idea that we have to rely on electoral politics. And again, at the beginning, I was very clear how this unspecified, undefined timeline of when we may or may not get these policies with electoral politics, that is completely divorced from reality. And it's clear that we need Medicare for all and UBI immediately within the next 2 years. And we're not going to get some huge wave of elected progressives in 2022. We're not going to get it in 2024. And what, by 2030 or whatever? Like, again, we're in an emergency. We need these policies right now. So we need to move from electoral politics and stop viewing that as if that's our only option, because it isn't. Was that Martin Luther King's only option? Was he relying on electoral politics and electing enough anti-segregationists and electing enough civil rights activists into Congress, and then they're going to introduce legislation, and then they're going to have a vote on it, and then they're going to pass the Civil Rights Act? That's not what he was doing. His only option, their only option at the time, was the people, was public pressure. And that was what they used, because they knew nobody in Congress was going to be fighting for them. They knew nobody in Congress was going to advance their agenda. So they treated everybody as if they were the enemy. And they had to put pressure on everyone to get them to the right position. So this whole, oh, they're on our side and we have to leave them alone and we should only talk about, no, everybody should feel the heat. And it doesn't matter if it's Democrats in office, it doesn't matter if it's Republicans in office. The strategy should be the same. Let's make it untenable for these politicians to continue to ignore us and our policy demands. That's the only way we get the policies we need. So this whole, oh, we have to wait for them and they're our only hope and you guys better be nice to them because if we don't have them, we have nothing. That's what you think. That's what you think in your limited mindset and in your the limitations you put on yourself, which is that electoral politics or we're never going to get anything. That's you. That's your only option. That's not the only option for the rest of us who see that's not going to get us the policies that we need. And then now this gets to another point which I really can't stand, and it's making this whole conversation incredibly disingenuous. And it's the way people are trying to downplay the grievances. And the way people are trying to act like, oh, we're just being petty. These are just petty, personal, small things. They don't agree with you on everything, and you want to call them a sellout. Don't be sleazy like that. Don't be weaselly like that, because it's not like I'm saying, you know what, I think we should have a $3,000 UBI, and AOC is out there, and Bernie Sanders is out there, raising hell, doing protests, and doing public pressure campaigns, calling out Nancy Pelosi, calling out Joe Biden, telling them we're not passing shit unless we pass a $2,000 UBI. And just because I don't agree with them on the exact dollar amount, I'm over there going to call them a sellout. That's not what this disagreement is. And it's incredibly disingenuous when people try to frame it like that. I don't know why people can't just state the facts of what the situation is and actually go, argue for your position on the merits. It's like the default position is just to straw man everybody who's saying these things about Bernie Sanders, saying these things about AOC, and not even address the merit of their argument. So instead of just trying to minimize it and oh, it's just minor disagreements, say exactly what it is. Say that they had the numbers to force a floor vote on Medicare for all, and they chose not to do it. And people are mad at them for it after they donated to their campaigns, after they volunteered for them, after they put their blood, sweat, and tears into getting these politicians elected, and on the very same issue. And at the time when we needed the most, and they arguably had the best chance to get it, they chose not to do it. And that's why people are calling themselves. Don't do this disingenuous bullshit and act like, oh, we're being petty and we're being small and we're attacking our allies. Oh, they agree with you on 90%. No, they don't agree with me on 90% of the time. Or else they would have forced a vote on Medicare for all. Or else they wouldn't have endorsed Joe Biden. And they definitely wouldn't have done it for no goddamn reason and getting absolutely nothing in return. They wouldn't have voted to make Nancy Pelosi Speaker of the House again if they agree with me 90% of the time. So stop trying to act like these are just minor disagreements. And then the whole, oh, it's just strategy. We're just having a strategy disagreement. They are implementing what they think is the best strategy to get Medicare for all, and we want to do this. And because they don't agree with us on every single point of our strategy, we're calling themselves. That's not what it is. Again, first of all, they got elected on this explicit strategy of doing a hostile takeover of the Democratic Party. They got elected on not saying Republicans bad, I'm going to go to Congress and tell everybody how bad the Republicans are. They got elected saying the Democrats are the huge insidious problem and they're a huge obstacle to left policies in this country. That's what they got elected on. They got elected on busting up the Democratic establishment. And now that they're there, all they do is kiss the ring of the establishment. All they do is roll over and not rock the boat, take the path of least resistance, because I don't know what. They think that they're going to get favors from Nancy Pelosi, and eventually one day she'll bring Medicare for all up for a floor vote if they're nice enough, if they go along with the leadership of the Democratic Party enough. So not only did they switch strategies, and now they aren't doing what they got elected to do, which was do the hostile takeover of the Democratic Party. And now they've adopted this vague strategy, but they won't even explain to us what their strategy is. Everybody is left guessing. And we have to come to these conclusions because they won't even acknowledge. They're acting like they went to Congress and absolutely nothing has changed. But again, nobody sent them there to be nice to Nancy Pelosi and hope one day, maybe 10 years from now, 15 years from now, she brings Medicare up for a floor vote. That's not what they got elected on. And the fact that they won't address that change in strategy is a problem. So if they actually believe that our strategy is bad, then why don't they come out and say it? Because again, this is what they ran on. So they had to think it was a good idea at some point. And they're not doing that. They're objectively not doing that. So why aren't they making the case for what the strategy is that they think is best? We're like, are we supposed to just, we have a strategy disagreement, and I'm supposed to just with blind faith believe that their strategy is best? No, I think their strategy is shitty. We all thought it was shitty. That's why we started movements like Justice Democrats and Our Revolution to begin with, to be adversarial to the corporate Democrats. So even if it's a strategy disagreement, they're objectively going with the wrong strategy that's proven to get no results. Another thing I want to touch on is just the condescending tone. Again, like, why won't people just act like we are serious people with serious thought out positions, and we have a detailed explanation for why we think that we are? Why people keep talking to us like we're fucking stupid and like we're irrational children who need to be talked down to? Like, it is very annoying. And especially considering that we're the ones that are right and you're wrong, and you can't even make a coherent argument to explain, to disprove the points that we're making. You just keep talking down to people as if we're stupid and you're just smart because you're you. And then Nina hits us with the, oh, they just got there. They just got their argument. Like, oh my God. How many excuses can you make for them? They just got there. Well, would you look at that? And they just got there. They've been there for 2 years. And would you look at that? The 2 years that they've been there happen to be the most consequential moments in politics in my lifetime. A deadly pandemic, the worst economic crisis in history. Oh, would you look at that? A defining moment in your career, and that's when you got into Congress. So this whole they just got there thing, like, what is that supposed to mean? Were they running? And when they were running, did they say, you know, you're going to elect us, but don't expect anything from us yet. Don't expect anything for at least 5 years, 10 years from now. And then maybe we could deliver you some results. Or did they say, we're going to go there, we're going to rock the boat, we're going to shake shit up, and we're going to bust up the status quo, and we're going to deliver you results. And I don't care if that makes everybody in Washington, D.C. hate me. I don't care if that makes me a one-term congressperson. We're going to go there, we're going to shake shit up. That's what they said. And they said they were going to deliver, and they haven't. And now that they haven't, and again, the extremely consequential time when people need them the most, oh, they just got there. What do you guys expect them to change everything? Come on, that's fucking pathetic. Them just getting there has absolutely nothing to do with whether or not they should have forced a vote and should have forced Nancy Pelosi out and should have forced a floor vote on Medicare for all. They all could have just got elected in this election cycle. The Justice Democrats could have just got their first representatives in Congress just now, just been sworn in on whatever the date was, January 4th or whatever the date, January 3rd. They could have all just been sworn in, but they would have all had the same power to deny Nancy Pelosi the speakership, and they would all have the same power to force a floor vote on Medicare for all. So them being there 5 years longer or 10 years longer, that had absolutely nothing to do with them actually trying to advance such policies in that moment. They just on purpose chose not to do it. And so I want to end on this. And this is a question I keep asking. Everybody's mad at us for calling them sellouts. Everybody's mad at us for calling them frauds. Everybody's mad at us for being done with them, stop donating to them, being even harsher in our criticism. Okay, if we can't do those things now, after they failed in such an epic way, then when can we ever do it? When were we ever allowed to call them a sellout or a fraud? When are we ever allowed to do that? What's this arbitrary line that you have drawn that once they pass that, then it's merited for them to call them a sellout? Because she said it right there. She said They haven't sold out in any way at all. Okay, so then give me the exact qualifications needed for them to be a sellout. And like I've talked about on the show before, that there's this misconception that sellout means you give me this amount of corporate money and I will do this for you and now I'm a sellout. No, I've read the definition before. Selling out is abandoning one's principles for reasons of expediency. And they've abandoned their principles, the principles and the policies that they got elected on. They've abandoned that for reasons of expediency, because it's better for their career if they don't rock the boat in the Democratic Party. It's better for their career if they don't go out every day and call Nancy Pelosi a corporate tool and Joe Biden a tool of his corporate donors. It's easier for them to go along and vote for the CARES Act than to raise hell and let everybody know that the Democrats and the Republicans are in on a corporate heist to rob the public in the middle of an emergency. It's easier for their careers. That was the path of least resistance. They abandoned their principles for expediency. So I'm going by the textbook definition of sellout here. And if you're going to tell me that they haven't sold out, what's that line then? Because this line that they seem to be going for is, oh, you can do everything up and including making arguments as to why we shouldn't have a floor vote on Medicare for all in the middle of a pandemic and economic crisis. You can even do that after running on Medicare for all, and we won't call you a sellout. They have this very narrow definition of a sellout, and it's if you explicitly take corporate money and you make a public announcement, you have a press release saying, I hereby renounce my allegiance to the left movement, and I am now a sellout. That's like their only way. That's the only way anybody's allowed to call it Justice Democrats a sellout. And it's ridiculous. So again, stop spending all your time browbeating people who are angry at politicians who failed in this moment, who have failed in an unforgivable way. And again, you can say, oh, there are 400 members of Congress, there's 100 people in the Senate, you can't put it all on them. They are all responsible. Every single one of them. Not a single elected official in this country should ever have elected office, should ever have public office again. That's how bad they fucked up in this emergency. And this idea that that's an extreme position to take. How is that an extreme position to take? When 500,000 people are dead from a raging out of control virus and they still have no plans to get it under control. 40 million people are going to be evicted. They still have no plans to deal with that. 60 million people lost their job. They still have no plans to deal with that. And again, they've all had their moments when they could have had an impact and they could have changed the direction of the response to this crisis. It doesn't matter if it was just 6 of them. Because like we've been over 100 times, just 6 of them could have held up the speaker's vote. So, and again, you can't give me an excuse for why almost a year since it has started and none of them have called out Democratic leadership by name for their shitty response to this crisis. Not one of them have done it. So, I'm very confident in putting them all in the same boat of you should all, your behavior, your actions, your response to this crisis is disqualifying. It's a disqualifying factor in the way people should think whether or not you should be in public office. None of them should be in public office, ever. So instead of browbeating people because they're more mad at politicians than you are, get those politicians to stop doing the shitty things that we're criticizing, and maybe people wouldn't call them sellouts. So this is annoying, it's frustrating. And clearly, if you can't tell by now, Nina Turner, if she goes to Congress, she won't change a goddamn thing, and she'll be just like every other regular-ass Democrat in Congress.